Hello, this is a tutorial for the Danse Bacchanale Part 6. We're going to go over several things, and I'm going to presume that you haven't had a lot of experience, or you might not know what some of the things mean, so if I explain something you already know, sorry, but better to go over too much than not enough. And this is a view from the other direction of, like, the music stand, mics, everything is set up for my bedroom practice spot. When you're going to put the music on the stand, as I've suggested before, you want to tape everything together so that you don't have loose pages flying in all different directions if something happens, like if your ceiling fan goes to blow too hard. But you'll notice if you put it on the stand, it might curl around on one side or the other, or get to where you can't read it. So a couple things you can do to help with that. One is if your stand has these little extender arms, you can use them to give you more support behind the music, and it'll help hold it up. But what I prefer to do, as this still is pretty flimsy or wind could blow it the wrong way, is take something like a folder, and just a regular open up folder, and you can set it so that it's like half on the stand, half off the stand. If you have a book, or etude or song or music, something like that, put it up to extend. You'll have to make sure that at least half of it is on the stand, so because if it's too much, it'll just fall off. But if you have at least half of it or a little more than half of it on the stand, then it will extend the back more. And you can put your 3-page part out, and it'll lay completely flat, and you can even write on it with a pencil and not worry about poking holes through the music. Now, the first thing I'm going to talk about is some of the pizzicato, the plucking. You'll see he writes with the thumb or Divisi. There are several different ways you could play these notes. Like, I'm looking at the very first note. There's 3 of them. You can either try and stop the first and second note and play the open top. You can use just your thumb and strum them all, but you have to be careful that your finger is not touching the A string at all if you do all 3. You can pinch it with your thumb on the G string, your first finger on the A string, and pinch them together. Or you can just pick one of these notes, or 1 or 2 of these notes. Any of those is perfectly valid. It's a great way, and we'll have enough people playing all the different things that we can cover it. But the idea is anytime that you have chords like that, especially over at letter G and H, where you have like all those notes, you don't want to do a slow strum. You want it to sound like they're all being struck at the same time. So if you can pluck them all, or if you can just do 1 or 2, or even just 1, you can pick 1, you can pick 2, you can pick 3 or 4, but you want it to always sound like it's all at the same time in this piece. And like I said, what I like to do on things like this is with thumb on the bottom note, first finger on the top note, and just pinch them into each other. So that's step 1. The next thing I'm going to talk about is you see a lot of places where he puts down, down, or I'm looking at letter I, looking back after letter C. Anytime in the music that you see a down, down, you don't stop the bow and go on. You actually pick the bow up and go back to the frog and do it again, but you have to do the circle back to the frog really fast. So it'll be the... You can kind of cut the first note a little short, but you have to make sure that the second note lands right on the second beat. So if you're going 1, 2, 1, 2, like at the very end, where it's da, 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 da. So it'll be. And in any of those, if you're having trouble getting the double stops, you can pick just 1 note. You can pick just the bottom note, just the top note. As long as we have some people on both notes, that's what's the most important part. So that happens anytime that you have 2 downbows in the same direction, but they don't have like a slur connecting them together. Like even at measure 51, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 58 is the first time that you see a make sure that you come back to the frog. You might want to practice just being able to put the bow down and get the very next note quickly, because that's going to happen a lot. One other thing, in the very last line, you'll see 2 notes with slashes through the stem of the note. That's called tremolo. And for tremolo, you want to go just back and forth really fast. But you don't want to try and use your whole elbow and forearm, because that would be really stiff and you get tired super fast. You want to try and do it more just off the ends of your hand. And you definitely want to be above the middle of the bow. You don't want to try and do it down at the frog. If you try, it's really, really, really hard to even keep it on the string. So you want it to be somewhere above the middle of the bow. And pretend there's like a pivot right here in the middle of your arm. And it's the hand going back and forth, the wrist going back and forth that makes that motion. If you can't get it that fast, you can play like 16th notes. There'll be enough other people doing the full tremolo that it'll sound fine. So that's the very end, and that's the double down strokes, and that's the plucking. Now, I want to talk a little bit even just holding the bow when you're playing pizzicato, because we don't have time to put the bow down. So you need to be able to hold the bow so that when you get from letter B to letter C, you can quickly go back and forth. Same thing that happens before letter F, you're plucking, and at letter F, you have to play with the bow. So you might want to practice. You take the bow and curl it up into the hand so that you're holding it up against the palm of your hand. Then you put your first finger out, and that can do your pizzicato while you're holding the bow in your hand, and then you twist it back down to playing position. Now, if that's something that's really hard for you to do, it's okay to drop out a measure or two before you go to arco to get the bow into position and then be ready to play. So like at the beginning, at A, we should play with your thumb on the side of the fingerboard, and you... But then when we're at 31... I'll go over the fingerings in a little bit, but right now I just want to talk a little bit about at letter C, when you have this repeated quarter notes, you don't want to be... They're short, so it's almost like you pull the note off the string and just come back to the same spot over and over and over and over and stay quiet for the whole 16 measures. We don't get loud until we start changing the rhythm. So you might need to practice just... Can you get it to go and speak at that same spot? I would suggest even a little below the balance point. So near the balance point or just below it. And by balance point, I mean literally, if you balance the bow at that spot, this side weighs just as much as all that side weighs. So that's a really good spot to be playing notes that are short and you want to in control. And if you have to do it over and over and over and over and over, and you want it to sound the same every time, but you want to stay soft and keep it steady. Next, looking at the music that's at measure 58. This is the first time this syncopated part comes, where the rhythm is not straight on the beats, but it comes off the beats. So it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 2. So, couple things. One, when you have C to C sharp to D, we might not want to do that with 4, 4, 4, like I just did, because it's kind of messy. And since you have a long time with the open D to get ready for the C, you can set the C with your second finger instead of your fourth finger. Then you can either play it with fourth finger on the D or open string on the D. you always have the second finger on C instead of your fourth finger, then you'll be ready for C, C sharp D when that happens at 66 and at 74 when you have the... But at 75, it's a B flat. So remember that extend back B flat. So at 74, it'll be... And the next... Or if you want to go back to first position, then you can go back to first position. But if you want to play... You can do those few notes in extended second position. Just remember, in all of these songs we have B flats. So on the G string, that's always going to be a 2. And on the A string, the B flat's always going to be a low 1, that extended back 1, where you stretch your finger out straight and reach back and you play a little bit. You want to make your finger straight. You don't want to try and keep it curled because you can't reach the extra half step if you do that. Because 2, 3, and 4 are supposed to always stay the same. Whether 2, 3, and 4 are dropping down and 1 stays behind, or 2, 3, and 4 are staying here and 1 reaches back. So I'm going to go back to measure 31. We have that scale. We're pizzicato, so... But now you have an A flat, and then you have a B flat. So there are a couple different ways you can play that. You can either, what I would do is would go to 3, 1 for G, F, then A flat, G, and then you can go either B flat back in half position or extended back from first position, or go up to fourth position. So. Or you can just drop out if you're getting ready to do. So when you do this part, you might need to practice just that one line. Starting at 30 would be, and then 31, 32, 33, shift. Shift again. And but quiet. So that's the first place with a different fingering. Another place where you're going to need to decide, anytime you have that B flat, is it going to be reach back for it. So we're going to play an extended position a lot in this song because of all those B flats. One last thing, the rhythm. Starting at measure 58, if you look, you'll see all of those are in sets of 4 measures. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 2, and 1. Then the next set of 4 kind of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, and 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, and done. It's all that syncopation, like you're jumping, you're jerking, you're dancing, you're out of step or ahead of step. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, 2. I'm sorry, I got the bowing all messed up. Let me try that again. 16. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, and 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and even these should be short. And the same thing at letter D. These are all on the offbeat. If you're counting 1 and 2 and 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 1. And in that measure, the third measure of D, where you have 2 in the same bow stroke direction, you just play, let go a little bit, and then push back down again. So you don't pick the bow off the string, you just lighten up and then push back down again. So play just one of the notes or both of them. But if you play both notes, it might be harder to play in tune. I would pick just one part. Either play the top notes or play the bottom notes. The pizzicato, again, coming up after E, when you have just on the beat. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 2 measures of rest to get ready for the chords. But the first one is not too loud. And if you can't play all 3 notes, pick just 2. Or pick just 1. Pick 1, pick 1. You can pick any of those. The idea is this is almost like a drum. And then at F, we do that thing where everything's down, down, down again, but instead of writing it as a quarter note with a dot, he's just putting the rests in between to make it really clear that it's the same idea as letter C, it's just loud. So at C, we're going quiet, but it's the same spot every time. Now we're doing the same. This time you do have to pick the bow up a little bit so that there's more space in between each of those notes. And be very, very sure you get nice and quiet at 157. 156, diminuendo, get softer. 157, now your piano. So when you do it then. And in any of these passages, if those notes are too fast for you, it's okay to play just one note on the downbeat. So it's okay to play just the first note in every measure. The important thing is we all play together. One other thing, anytime that you're getting to a new section, like at letter G, it's suddenly a lot faster, use your ears. We don't have to start playing right away. Other people do. Other people will start the tempo right away. We get 4 whole measures of 1, 3, and 4, and so we can place that one pizzicato at exactly the right spot.
Make it to the end. Here we go.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And just let it ring. Don't worry, it'll die out eventually, and then you just get ready for letter A while they're playing the solo. He'll count us in. When you're practicing, if you want to, you can just start the recording right at letter A. But for now, I'm just listening to the whole song. You'll notice I don't have it over my whole ear. I just have it on one ear so I can hear my playing. Here we go.
1,
letter A.
2, 1,
Ready?
2. Letter A.
1, 2, 3. Low 1. Low 1 again.
B.
Remember to shift.
Letter C.
Shh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can go to 3 on this. rest, 2, rest.
Letter F.
Now soft.
Here we go.
G is faster. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2.
Letter H.
This is
Letter
hard.
I.
Tremolo. 3, 4. Long.
Two bows.
Long, you can hold
1,
it.
2, 3. Off.
And just let it ring.
Awesome. Let it ring,
Don't
let it
move.
ring, let it ring. Sit there,
Sitting
sit
there,
there. Smile. Hold still.
And then when you let it go, you're done. So, have fun. And I will see you guys next time. If you have any questions, please reach out.